CCS family, and welcome back to season 2 of Teacher Chat. Excited to have you back.
Glad to be here. New year, new energy, new enthusiasm.
New way we're doing the podcast.
That's right. We're well rested.
Yes.
Right now.
I will say that. It's been a busy 3 weeks. I can't believe it's only been 3 weeks. I'm not going to lie, Dr. Walker. I feel like it's been 3 months.
That's right.
But, you know, we'll keep it.
Yeah.
We'll keep
I mean,
tracking.
the beginning of the school year, all the things.
Yes, that's true.
All
That
the
is
things.
true. That is definitely true.
And so, but we're fortunate. I would also say blessed to have an awesome cadre of principals and teachers and instructional coaches and instructional assistants and all of the support staff at CCS that make it work.
Yes.
And that show up and show out for kids and to get those outcomes. So glad to be here.
Yeah. How was your summer?
It was good. We had a lot of work to do. We were planning. We're going to talk about PD today, so we're doing some planning for that at both the beginning of the summer and then when we came back, some people took some time off in July, and we all need rest, so that was good. But I'm excited about the year. Got an opportunity to get away. Was in Key West for a few days. Interesting though. There's a point where it goes beyond refreshing.
Okay,
The water was like 90 degrees.
Okay. So you went hot.
It was hot. Yeah, I mean, we had a great time, but the fish were crying out for help. I mean, even the coral reefs, like literally, honestly, the coral reefs, they were saying were dying because the water was so hot. So, but it was good. We had a good time, and we were 90 miles from Cuba. We couldn't see it, right?
Okay.
But we saw the marker and looked across the ocean.
Okay, I would say then you beat me out then, because I went to Chicago. I just went back home.
All right, Evanston. All right.
Yes, I'm glad you remember.
Yeah.
People are always like, what part of Chicago are you from?
And your car made it there?
I flew. Thank you very much. But you know what was very interesting? We're not even going to get into that. But I flew United, and when I was coming back, I got a message saying that United had grounded all their flights, but the ones that were in the air could keep going.
Okay. And you were in the air?
Yeah, I don't know how I felt about that.
Okay. Well, you made it back. Yes.
I got literally when I was walking the door, and I was like, did they just ground all their flights, but they let me go in the air?
And so what was going on?
They said they had a system failure.
Okay.
Yeah. So luckily, that's only a 45-minute flight. And it was actually a nice size plane. Normally they don't, like the planes are getting so smaller and smaller. This was the first time I've actually seen a huge size plane with United in a couple of years. Usually it's Southwest, I feel like, do the big 3 on each side. But I had a great time. It was hot when I went. I will say it was really hot.
Okay.
But I stayed right along the beach.
Nice.
Yeah, my sister's best friend's mom has a home that's vacant right now. And I stayed right along the beach by Loyola University. So it was great. Got up at 5 o'clock, ran every day.
Now, do people get in the water there? Is that a thing?
It is a thing.
Okay. Was it a thing for you?
I put my toe in it. I didn't want to go fully, but I said, a lot of people are out there paddle boarding, and I was like, I've done it before along Chicago River. I let my sister convince me last year, told her never again in life can she plan the family vacation activity. Because that was 3 hours boarding to Navy Pier to see the fireworks.
Okay.
Yeah, it was not that great. I had to keep saying, if God could do it for Noah, he could do it for me. But it was fun. I'm trying to figure out my motivation to keep it up. I ran this morning, but something about being on that water and the breeze and just the atmosphere, and now I'm back in New Albany running. But I mean, we'll figure it out. So when I came back from vacation, huge PD day. I was told right away, block it off your calendar. And in my mind, I'm thinking, I'm not a teacher, so why am I blocking this off my calendar? And when I got to the convention center, I was like, holy smokes. How big it was. I've been to professional developments, but nothing on this magnitude, nothing on this scale. So when I was told, no, you have to be here for this, I was blown away.
Yeah.
I don't know how you guys pulled it off. How the teachers seemed to love it. We were giving away some free swag, I know, from our communications department. And I was the one who was like, this is so much walk-in. I know they're complaining, but they were like, no, this is great. Hi. Like, they were loving it. I didn't hear not one complaint from people. So we have some guests today that were a part of our professional development.
Absolutely.
Do you want to go ahead and introduce them?
Sure. So I'm going to just say a word about them.
Yes.
And then I'll let them introduce themselves.
Awesome.
I'll start across from me, Roni Becht, who I've known for many years. Roni and I I met her when we were both instructional coaches. We were working in the TAP program and was super impressed by her then and continue to be impressed by her work now. And newer is Jomika Jackson. And I was remarking to her when I walked in, I said, I've heard nothing but good things about your work. And, reputation is one of those things that is invaluable. So appreciative to have both of these ladies here. Jomika currently is serving as an instructional coach at Westmount. Yes. And Roni serves in a district capacity. So we'll start with Jomika. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got to this point in your career, what excites you about your work, and then we'll transition over to Roni, and then we'll get into our topic for the day.
Well, I am Jomika Jackson, and I am the instructional coach at Westmount Elementary. This is my 12th year in the district and my second year as a coach, so I am a newer coach. I got into coaching. Honestly, I wasn't planning on being a coach until our current coach knew that she was leaving the position, and she approached me about it. And at the time, I kind of felt like I was in a place where you're kind of ready for a change, looking for a change, but don't exactly know what that change is going to be. So when she kind of came to me, it was almost like the opportunity fell into my lap, and I kind of felt like I would be crazy if I didn't follow through with that opportunity. So here I am in my second year of coaching, and it has definitely been a learning experience. I'll say I felt like I took myself out of, I knew exactly what I was doing in the classroom. I was on top of it, and then I just felt like I placed myself back as like a rookie as an instructional coach. And so last year really felt uncomfortable. I'm not going to lie. It felt uncomfortable, but I have learned to be able to sit and not uncomfortable and be okay with it. I probably learned more in the last year than I have in 5 years in the classroom. So huge learning experience, and so I really am appreciative, and I'm happy to be here, Tyler. When you invited me, I emailed you right back on my phone.
I was so thankful because it was Friday at like 5 o'clock.
It was, and I emailed you right back on my phone, and then I forwarded your email to my principal and was like, can I go? Because I already said yes. So here we are today.
Awesome.
And I'm Roni Becht, and this is year 31 in the district for me. Well, I started when I was 4. And so here we are at year 31. And honestly, I've served as an instructional coach in one capacity or another for about 22 of those 31 years. And I've had the privilege of working with school teachers, working with instructional assistants and paraprofessionals, the experience that we shared as part of the teacher advancement program, and worked at the district level and at the school level as an instructional coach, and I'm currently one of the district coaching leads for Columbus City Schools, and so we get to see all of the magic that coaches are weaving in classrooms as teachers are weaving their magic with our students. So I think a large part of what I really enjoy doing in Columbus as part of my instructional coaching role is the professional learning piece, because there's nothing more rewarding than for a group of educators, whether that be teachers, whether it be our school leaders, whether it be some of our department leads, leaving the room and then making something happen that betters outcomes for students. So, so here we are.
So it's great to have you both.
Thank you.
I'm excited to have you guys both here and to have this conversation, kind of just reminiscing on the good 2 days that we had. And
Yeah.
where do we go? Where are we going next?
Where do we go from here? So, yeah, I mean, you mentioned, when we were sort of talking, getting ready for the conversation today, that we've done something like this before. It's been some years before the pandemic. And so this is my second year in this role as Chief Curriculum and Instruction Officer. So when I came into the role, one of the things that I think was resonated with me very clearly was that we needed to sort of reaffirm intentionality, right, throughout our system, particularly as it relates to curriculum and instruction, because intentionality means that you're thinking about not just what you're going to do, but why you're doing it and how you're going to do it, and then pulling that thread all the way to what is the impact going to be ultimately for students.
Yeah.
Right. And I will say it, and I've said it before. Like, we have some of the best teachers, administrators. I'd stack them up against any across the nation. And for us, what we were really trying to solve for in our concept, intentional practices, remarkable results. We were thinking about, what do we do? How can we bring a PD that is needed for our practitioners now? Was that we wanted to ensure that we leaned into the expertise that we had, but that we also had clarity of focus.
Yeah.
Right. And so we were talking about the core instructional framework, and that became sort of the foundation for how we were going to organize PD. And for us, that core instructional framework is our one band, one sound, one score. It is our one team, one plan, one goal. Phil Jackson had the triangle offense for the Bulls and for the Lakers, and we have the core instructional framework.
Yeah, I mentioned that. I was like, is Dr. Walker up there talking sports? When you
Where's he going with that? But it works. It works.
It does.
We have to find multiple pathways to make connections.
You say Phil Jackson, so I'll give it to you. That's a good one. Look at the Bulls. So I'll give it to you.
Okay. Yeah. But, the reality is, the Bulls and the Lakers,
yes,
they had great individual performers.
Yeah.
Michael Jackson, he was great too, but Michael Jordan was, an awesome player, was, renowned in his abilities and had been MVP and all the things, but never won a championship, and it took sort of a clear plan of how it is that we work together, not just what an individual performer can do, not just what one outstanding teacher can do or what one outstanding principal can do, but how do we leverage and scale expertise across the district in a way that causes us to have an exponential impact.
Yeah.
And so that for us, what Phil Jackson found out was that what worked for him was that triangle offense, right? It gave individual performers an opportunity to work together in such a way that it gave them structure, but also creativity and flexibility within that. Mm-hmm. And that's what we have to do as a district, because teachers are creative by nature. I will be the first one to say that teaching is rocket science. It is one of the most complex, difficult things anyone could ever endeavor to do. Mm-hmm. And so when we're looking at how do we help teachers to better their practice, it really is about, hey, what's the best structures that we can give them, a framework that we can give them, but then we also got to allow them to be creative in their craft.
Yeah. And
so this PD concept was really birthed out of that, right? It was birthed out of the recognition that the power is with people, that the answer is in the room. And what sometimes becomes a challenge for us, what we problematize sometimes is people, but oftentimes what the problem is the process.
Yeah.
Is that that we have some sort of disconnect in how it is that we're working together in such a way that we're not getting the best result. And what ends up happening is there's a diminishing rate of return on all of our efforts. And so we all are working hard, but this PD says, how can we work hard, smarter together? And so that was our starting point to think about what we're going to do. And we said, landed on 2 days. But there were a lot of people, more than I can name, that were involved in pulling this off. Certainly, Tanya Milligan and Ebony Johnson were two that were worked diligently. But I should also say it was a cross-departmental effort, right?
Sure.
That this was a collaborative effort with transformation and leadership, with equity, with strategic performance, with now whole child. And the recognition is that when we're all better when we're working together, that the collective intelligence is always better than the IQ, the intellectual quotient. And so that's how we moved. That's how we began to think about this. And what was birthed out of it was an awesome experience, I think, for teachers to be able to engage in that allows them to begin thinking about bettering their craft. And then our goal is to continue to pull this thread throughout the year so that we would start with this concept through the various quadrants of learning design, learning conditions, learning experience, learning from assessments, learning from student work, those elements of the framework, all situated around equity, and that we be pulling that thread through each of the 5 PD days of the year. Looks a little different for our elementary teachers because of their letters training, but they'll still be getting the exposure. So I think, I'd like to ask Roni and Jomika, whichever one, like, what was for you the biggest takeaway for the PD experience, and where do you see the biggest opportunity for us as we think about 2024 and beyond?
I think that my biggest takeaway when I attended in the classes that I chose for myself, I was really trying to think from a coaching perspective. And so trying to think about classes that included curriculum and instruction, but also the leadership aspect, and how can I be most effective with teachers. Like Roni said, our goal is to inspire that growth, to encourage that growth, to begin to plant that seed, but then to be able to leave and it grows when we walk away. So I attended a lot of sessions about TBT and BOT, and so it allowed me to see some opportunities to kind of cut some of that red tape that might exist or existed in the future with some of our teacher-based teams and the way that they operate, and just kind of get back to the basics. And I know at West Mountain we call them the 4 essential questions. What are students supposed to learn? How will we know they learned it?
Yep.
What will we do if they don't? And what will we do if they did? So really trying to get to the basics of that is our job. How do we plan for instruction, instruct, evaluate that instruction, and then really be able to respond and be able to provide those kids those scaffolds and differentiation, and then to enrich those who had it in the first place. So I really enjoy just being able to see how other teachers may do it. You don't always get the opportunity, especially across elementary to middle to high school. We don't get the opportunity to see each other or hear each other's stories. And so I enjoyed being able to listen to other teachers and how they ran TBT and go, okay, sounds easy. It sounds simple, and that's how it should be. So that's what I took away mostly from it.
I think I would add to that, one of my main takeaways was that the answers are in the room. The talent is right here in our district. We need not seek out other presenters because our educators are the ones day in and day out that are finding out what works for students. So why not have them come in front of other educators and share what works? So there was that whole element of sharing best practices, but the teacher response to the professional learning experience was like no other. I've heard nothing but compliments.
Yeah.
So,
And what made you
Excuse me.
all decide to want to leverage that, though, to leverage in-house and to look at, we have the talent here. We have, what is it, 9,000 as far as employees and staff.
Yeah, it's
and
about
faculty.
4,500 or so teachers.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
So what made you all decide going into this? This is what we are CCS, so we are going to do this together.
Yeah. I think for me, it was a combination of things, but I would say the main thing was sort of my experience as a leader, right? And what I found worked in every sort of leadership setting that I've been in. And that is just simply this: when our processes are sound, our results will be sound. Mm-hmm. I've always found that as a leader, and I've also always found that when you put your trust in people, you'll never be disappointed. You might get hurt every now and then, but you will never be disappointed. They'll always exceed your expectations, right? And so it's risky. Yeah. That's a risky way of going about it, some say, right? But also what I've come to realize is that this work is too heavy a lift to do alone. And so for me, sort of that was the ground level presumption in sort of how we were going to think about this is that, I found that the biggest challenges that I've always faced were process challenges. Mm-hmm. That, there's always some folks that, are challenging, right? I'll just put it in that way. But by and large, people want to do a good job. Mm-hmm. They want to get up and go into the classroom and have a great experience. And I found that when you have processes that equip and empower them to do that, they rise to the occasion. Mm-hmm. I've also been acquainted with in various different ways educators across our district who I know are well outperforming the curve. Folks that have taken proficiency ratings from the low teens, to the 60th and 70th percentile in our district. And so to me, that's a recognition that the answer's in the room. Mm-hmm. The answer's in the district. And what we're trying to solve for is not fixing Jomika, not fixing Roni, not fixing Todd, although some might say.
We don't need to go into that.
we don't need to do that today. But seriously, right? The answer's in, hey, how do we get to one band, one score, one sound, mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. right? And there's a lot of opportunity. Certainly, there are external factors. Like Roni, I've been in this district a long time. So 24 years. There are a lot of things that we can't control, but there's so many things that we can. Mm-hmm. We have so much opportunity just with the things that are currently in front of us that if we solve for that, I think we'll see truly remarkable results. Yeah. So that's a longer answer, but it is the honest answer in terms of when I was talking with the team. What resonated for me. I also think that your success is by design, not by mistake. And, it's I say all the time to my staff, success is well patterned and executed. All right, it's not mystical. It's well patterned and well executed. And, if we just follow the pattern, we learn that in kindergarten, right? Mm-hmm. But again, there's creativity, there's flexibility, but the framework, right? The triangle, the core instructional framework, right? If we do that well, then we'll find our way successful. And that's it for me. But I want to hear from Jomika and from Roni. Mm-hmm. But for me, that was it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Like what class or courses? Like why did you choose the ones that you chose? If you remember, because we had over when I went to count on the online where they can go and look. All the teachers can go online and look to see what courses mm-hmm. and classes and different opportunities we had. Mm-hmm. I believe I counted. Honestly, it was like over 150 mm-hmm. between the 2 days, probably mm-hmm. even more than that. How did you guys choose what, where, especially where you are right now in the space that you're in, and with having each of, like, I'm sure with West Mound and then looking on the district level, there's mm-hmm. different type of needs to why you're like, okay, this is going to work for me right now in the space that I know that I'm in and my team's in. This is going to work for me and my team. How did you guys decide that?
It was difficult.
I'm sure
because
really,
there were so many
Yeah.
quality sessions. And when I looked at who the presenters were, I knew most of them, and I wanted to go be with them because of how much they motivate me in my day-to-day work.
Yeah.
And then I thought, well, let me choose sessions that relate to the work that I'm getting ready to do in the next few months here. So I happened to choose the session on equity that Dr. Kiana Walker was presenting. And that relates directly to the work that we are doing with coaches. In fact, this summer, instructional coaches had the opportunity to participate in a book study that Dr. Walker herself is reading, the same book, Coaching for Equity by Elena Aguilar. And there's lots of work to be done there. Teachers want the very best outcomes for their students. Teachers get frustrated when they're not feeling like they are getting the very best outcomes for their students. And just the whole issue of accessibility, is the curriculum accessible in the same way
Yeah.
for every child, or should it be accessible in a way for what every child needs and their mode of being able to access it? And how all of the policies relate to striving to meet equity. So I chose to go to that session first and foremost. And I went to a couple of other sessions that relate to the work that I'm getting ready to do, and then for the rest of it, I was actually presenting. So
You were busy.
I was busy.
What did you present on? What was your...
Instructional coaching. So we did an instructional coaching session designed for teachers that have an interest in entering a coaching cycle with an instructional coach, but were curious to hear a little bit more about what all that entails. So,
Nice. For you, what were some of the sessions that were the most, striking for you, especially in the space that you're in?
Well, like I said, I was trying to choose sessions that related to both teachers and leadership. So I attended a few sessions on TBT, and then I also attended a few sessions from the curriculum department about the core instructional framework, and kind of how the frameworks would look different for elementary, and so we kind of got a bit of a sneak peek at what those look-fors in that document would look like. So I'd have something to be able to offer teachers or say to teachers, because I know that in elementary is going to get it in a different capacity compared to middle school and high school this year. So to be able to just kind of remain knowledgeable, and I actually really liked the document, the new look for sheet, and I enjoy it, and I'm hoping that once teachers get a look at it, that they can. I'm not going to lie, sometimes these changes are very well intended, and by the time they make their way down to those who need to enforce them, it seems as if it's just one more thing to do, one more change that the district is making, and then they're not received. Or there may be resistance to them. And so I really try to be that go-between for teachers, because chances are I got a bit more than they did on the purpose and why it is changing. And so I can kind of help teachers realize that, the district is really trying to piece it all together. During COVID, it was a whole lot of newness. The curriculum was new. We literally had like 4 different curriculums coming in at the same time, and we're at home.
Zoom was new, right?
Oh my
yeah,
goodness.
that too.
Trying to figure out the mute in the video button. Priority for
It was. All of that was so new that I feel like it took people extra time to really actually get into what is the new curriculum and how do I teach. Then we had to relearn it. How do I teach it back in person.
Yeah.
Because I taught it one way online. Now I need to teach it a different way now that I'm back in person. And so I feel like now that we're trying to tie it all together, how do we do that successfully? And I may not have the answer to that question right now, but I try to be that in between for teachers to kind of help them when they have those questions. Well, why are we doing this? And just trying to provide a bit of an explanation or provide some understanding for them.
Yeah.
I mean, I appreciate you saying that. And I would encourage you that you are the answer, right? Okay, as well as the rest of us. But what to me you named was, right, 4 slices of lasagna is great. 12, right, could be problematic, right? And so, I think the challenge for us, because everything looks different based off the seat that you sit in, right? So I've been a teacher, I've been an assistant principal, I've been an instructional coach, I've been a principal, I've been a director, and now in this role. But I think the unique challenge for us as a district, but I think the onus is on us, and I'm owning it, right? And my role is to say, like, how do we integrate? Because you're right, the experience, I've been on that receiving end, right? When the experience is, how many new things can I do? And so what usually happens when that occurs, if just being totally transparent, is people tune out and they tune off, they turn off. And so that's not what we want, right? And so we have to be super mindful about, like, hey, how are we being thoughtful about how all these pieces fit together? And for us, the challenge from a curriculum and instruction standpoint is ensuring that the products that we create for teachers are designed with the user experience in mind, right? With the lived experience of the teacher, not in a theoretical sense. Like, how does this really make sense for me when I have to use this with 30 kids in the classroom, and I got one runny nose, and I got, and as a principal, I got the parent in the office. I got, it would sometimes, as a building principal, it would take me 20 to 30 minutes once I came in the building to get to my office. Like, I would be stopped that many times. And I was willing to make that investment because I knew, hey, my success is going to rise and fall on these folks, so I'm going to take the time to talk to them. And I believe in that. But the reality is, our principals and our teachers, our instructional, they're pulled 1,000 different directions. And so that is the work for us, right? It's really being thoughtful about, when we say one band, one sound, one score, right? It's really being thoughtful about, like, how does this integrate, right? And how do we help people to see how their part fits into the whole? How what they do is connected, or how the multiple things that they're asked to do can be achieved within a 7-period day, or within the 120 minutes. And so we continue to push ourselves and part of this PD is us seeking to get clarity, right? Partnering with schools, right? To make sure that, hey, this is a partnership. All right, we're here to support, and we need to make sure that the things that we're doing are helping you to be more effective in your classroom and in your building.
And that's one of the questions that I actually had for you, Dr. Walker, because how intentional was it? When I was talking with Dr. Milligan, she had mentioned that it was really important to be able to have the instructional coaches, the teachers, the principals, anybody that's in that building, be able to work together, choose their sessions if they would like to choose their sessions together based upon, what's going to work for them and their expertise in their building, and to also have that kind of time together. Even with some of our new teachers, getting to be with them as well. How intentional was that, where it was like, instead of just having everybody take the same type sessions or just go to all the same sessions, you go to session A, B, C, and then tomorrow you'll do D, E, and F. How important was that for them to kind of carve out their own plan for themselves?
I mean, I think it was essential. I go back to flexibility within structure, right? I mean, Michael Jordan's great, but he needed some structure to be able to pull this off with his team. So same thing, we wanted to give teachers some flexibility, right? To say, okay, choose your own adventure. You can kind of pick the personal pathway for where you are as a professional, right? So if I'm Jomika and I'm a newer instructional coach, but I have capacity. Maybe I want to be a principal one day. Maybe I'm going to be a superintendent. I don't know these things. I'm just saying this, right? But you never know, right? But, the thing is, whatever, wherever you're at, there needs to be some flexibility for that. But there are also, right, is some structure saying that, hey, but these are the things that are core, that these are the things that we want to commit to across the district. So as Jomika mentioned earlier, like when we're looking at student work, hey, it's what do we want students to know? Mm-hmm. How do we know if they've learned it? What are we going to do if they've already learned it? And what are we going to do if they haven't learned it? And so, those are the things that give us sort of focus, but also give us flexibility. Mm-hmm. And for the team, as we started talking it through, that I think having the right mix of that, have too much on either side becomes a challenge, right? If you have too much of just, everyone does what they want, there's not enough clarity and focus to get anything done as a team, right? You got to have some sort of guiding framework. But if it's so rigid, there's no room for creativity and flexibility. Then you get into a point where people start shutting down because you sap the energy out of the room. So I'd be lying if I said it was easy. It's always something that we're tweaking and thinking about. But I feel like we're on the path, and certainly our goal is to as Dr. Chapman said, it's going to be bigger and better next year. Yeah. So no pressure, but we're endeavoring to deliver on that.
Yeah, I'm excited to see where you guys do it next. The State House, where are we going?
No, I think we'll probably stay with the feedback that we got was our location we were at worked. I think people liked being together. I saw people I hadn't seen in 5-10 years.
That's what I was going to say. How is that for you all to be, you're at 3700, you're at Westmount. How is that to see people that you probably haven't seen in a while in this type of space? And I mean, it seemed like there was not one person to me that did not enjoy these 2 days. I mean, even walking in the hallway, people were so excited and excited to see each other. How was that for you all coming back from summer break?
It was my favorite thing of the summer. My most favorite thing of the summer.
Sometimes people, I don't want to say dread, I don't want to say people dread coming to work and dread doing that, but you have to think of, oh my gosh, I've been off for a little bit, I've had vacation, and sometimes people are like, we got to start it back with this. But it seemed like no, like people literally loved it.
Yes.
How was that for you, seeing some people that,
Teachers, we love to talk.
Yeah.
We love to talk and we love to mingle and have adult conversations. Many of us spend all day in the room with children. And so we don't have a whole lot of opportunity to talk to other adults. And so we always love days like this, even if it's sometimes just to be able to be amongst our colleagues for more than 20 minutes at a time, in the lunchroom or whatnot. So I enjoyed it. I've been at Westmount the whole 12 years that I've been in education. So becoming a coach, I felt like I was able to make new friends. I have my little coach friends that I didn't have. I didn't know a whole lot of people. So I enjoyed being there because I got to see my coaches. I saw some instructional assistants out. I'm like, oh, hey, I didn't even know you're my massage therapist. I didn't know you worked for the district. That's really cool. So I enjoyed it. And I always love the opportunity to go to lunch, too.
Yes.
Okay. It's a nice location. A lot of options. Right?
Yes.
I heard some stories about lunch. Right? All good things. All good things.
Yes. Did you guys get a chance to have kind of a debrief with your teams? And I know we're only 3 weeks in, about roughly 3 weeks into the new school year, but have some of it, boots off the ground running. Some of this stuff been implemented already a little bit?
Yeah. Definitely. We've had some professional development before school started at Westmount that we were kind of looking to jumpstart some of the things that we were working on. So we had the opportunity to do that, and then we're hoping that kind of leads into the PD day. Like Dr. Walker said, a lot of elementary PD this year is letters, and so we're kind of looking for what are those little opportunities to make sure we stay on the same page as a staff. When we really tried to do some revamping of our BOT, how our TBT processes are working, and it's really hard, but we are really focusing on trying to start small. There's so many things coming from so many directions. How do we start small and really stick to what we said we were going to do this year?
Nice.
Refinement seems to be the name of the game right now. And what a contrast that is to when teachers were given several new programs and initiatives to implement all at once. And just the sense of feeling overwhelmed is one thing, but for our educators that are perfectionists, and many of them are, when you feel like you are teaching at a lesser version of yourself, you really beat yourself up about that. And so this was an opportunity. Nothing new was introduced. This was an opportunity to take everything that we have. We have ample resources in our district, and we have ample opportunities for teachers to reach out and connect to the presenters. All of the presenters shared their contact information, and I am aware of contacts happening between classroom teachers or instructional assistants or our school leaders and some of the presenters. And, that opportunity is different than when you go to a professional learning experience and you're listening and you're thinking, yes, I can get behind this idea, but every example that the presenter shares doesn't seem like the students that you are teaching in your classroom here in Columbus City Schools. And that was a contrast with the feeling that educators have described having as a result of our Summer Institute in-house right here, talking about our students and getting remarkable results.
So there was like a comfortability, because like you said,
Yes, ma'am.
even though we're in different aspects, I'm on the communication side. When we've gone to gone to conferences, it's like, well, that doesn't really fit our district. What may be happening in some of the suburban or rural, that's not really may not be happening here. So I appreciate that, because yes, that is, you're right, a conversation that a lot of people have when they're debriefing of how do we implement that. That doesn't really make sense for us. So to be around a group of individuals that are doing the same similar work with the same impact for the same students, the same student body population. Yeah, it's you got a smart idea there.
Well, it's not my idea, but I know how to recognize a good idea, right? And I think processes that unleash the creativity and the effectiveness of people, right, are what work, and particularly in a very complex. We are a $1.8 billion organization. We have near 46,000 students, at last check. And so there's a lot going on. We have, from pre-K to adult education going on in our district. So we're complex, we're big, but processes help you to narrow that down. So pivoting, I'd be remiss if I didn't talk a little bit about equity, right? If we didn't lean into that. We invited Goldie Muhammad to be one of the presenters. By all accounts, she was well received. We've been spending a lot of time, to your point, Tyler, looking through the feedback. So that has been, my work, our work has been sort of aggregating the feedback data, and lots of bright spots. But certainly, it seemed like, like her message was well received. So I'm just like, from a reflection standpoint, like what were your takeaways, Roni and Jomika, and maybe even Tyler? I mean, you were there, right? Takeaways from Goldie, in terms of what she had to share.
I actually didn't get the opportunity to hear her message, so I will defer to you all.
I would say, and I actually started to read the introduction of her book, and I think that sometimes equity is often confused with equality, right?
Yes.
We're going to use those terms synonymous, and they're not the same. Everyone getting the same thing doesn't make it equitable. So how do we, from a teaching lens, make sure that our students are receiving what they need from instruction, environment, all of those pieces and parts, because there's so many of them. And I often, when I think about equity, I think of that. If you ever seen the visual of the fence, right? And then there's the man who's tall enough to look over the fence all by himself. And there's the one that needs the step stool, and the one that might need the step ladder, and the one that's got to go all the way up the ladder to be able to see. How do we give that experience to our students? And I can't say that I have all of the answers, but what I took from Goldie was that you first start treating them as human beings and not test scores.
Yeah.
Not red, yellows, and greens, but as children. Because I believe that some children don't know the beauty of themselves, and you don't have to grow up to be some expert, some surgeon, to be successful, to be important, to make a difference. And I think it's important with our inner city population to help children understand that there are all walks of life, and what your job to do as a person is decide, who are you? What am I going to stand for? What values am I going to have? How will I live my life, and determine the choices, even from as young as where they are right now in elementary. How am I going to make choices if so-and-so wants me to do this, but that's not what I believe in? How am I going to stand up to those types of things? And how am I going to determine what's important to me? Because that's kind of the level that we're on. We have the kids that are coming there and like, well, so-and-so said that if I'm not her friend, then she's going to beat me up after school. And so I have those conversations with children like, honey, you have to decide. And yes, may that come with a bit of a stare and a glare from the little girl who may not like you. What do you want? Do you want to be her friend because she's making you be your friend, or do you not? And so I think that helping kids realize who they are as individuals and human beings was kind of what I took from Goldie, and not just looking at them from the terms of what can you do, what skills do you possess in the classroom, what skills do you possess in life?
Nice.
How can you refine and better those skills, and how can you determine, because they're kids, they've got a long time to determine who they are, but it really does start now. A lot of times kids make decisions and they don't even know what they're doing, or they're making decisions that because they're a child and they're being told. So just kind of seeing them as a human being, that was what I took from Goldie.
It's powerful.
When you're looking at the new, because the new framework was introduced, the new equity framework was introduced, and by looking at that new framework, you said you took some sessions around that at the professional development. How are we kind of tying that back together? Because I think the way you hit on it was fantastic on the way, talking about it, and especially what you've gotten out of Goldie. How are we kind of tying that all back into the education space in the academic learning space?
Yeah. I think for me, it's integrated within, right? So if you look at the framework, you have all the sort of elements of it around. So learning design, which is our lesson planning, and we get the learning conditions and learning experiences. It's instruction that takes place, so learning assessments, learning from student work, but at the center of the work is equity. And that's just each student getting the resources that they need to be able to develop to their full academic and social emotional potential.
Yeah.
And it's what they need now.
Yeah.
Right. And so there's been a lot of work done out of the equity department around, the equity framework. But again, our job is that when we're presenting frameworks, even to people, that we say, look, these are how these connect. Right. These aren't like you don't have to be doing 5 different things. Like when you're doing. When you're planning for your lesson, you have equity in mind. When you're delivering your instruction, you have equity in mind. When you're learning from student work, there's equity propositions that you're considering. All of that, it's not 2 separate things that you're doing. It's sort of one work that has multiple facets to it.
Yeah.
And I think the more that we make those connections for people, the more that they're able to see, okay, like this is what this looks like. Goldie talked about these elements of criticality and justice and joy. And for us, that's our portrait of the graduate. It's our critical thinking. It's global empathy. It's adaptability. It's communication, technology. All of those things are part of what make up not only 21st century skills, but mindsets. Mm-hmm. What does it take? What sort of emotional intelligence do you need to be successful as a person? And how do you thrive, right? Our goal is for students not to just survive. We want them to be able to thrive in these spaces. Mm-hmm. I never forget when I was at Walnut Ridge, we had this credo that, I am somebody going somewhere in pursuit of excellence. I'm significant, courageous, outstanding, talented. I'm a Scott. Nothing without excellence. Disciplined people, disciplined thoughts, disciplined action. Who are we? Scots. Who are we? Scots, right? But I have kids now. They're in their 30s and close to 40 now. So this is, for me, this is challenging. But they remember this, right? They're hitting me up on LinkedIn, right? Because I'm not on Facebook. I need to get a Facebook account. But they're like, hey, you remember the credo? Yeah. And so those are the things I think when we talk about equity, when we talk about the whole child, right? And we have an awesome department of whole child that's being led now by Liz McNally and Tyree Pollard and others that are on that team, that I think we have to get right. Mm-hmm. And it's not an either or, it's a both and, right? We should be doing this as a cohesive work.
Yeah. How do you, in the sense though, because I agree with you, Jomika, of I don't want to say buy-in because I don't feel like you have to get buy-in with equity, but so oftentimes people sometimes misconstrue what equity is. Sometimes they think of it as, like you said, a social injustice. And I think for our district, and correct me if I'm wrong, I remember the equity department coming on during the midst of the pandemic. So I think sometimes people equated it to what could have been going on around that time, and they're thinking, oh, well, it's supposed to be about this when really it's for all. It's for everybody. It's the message is different. It's not tailored to a specific group of people. It's for everybody. So because you took sessions on that, Roni, how for you are you going to be able to kind of like, how do you talk when you're talking to other coaches and talking to teachers? Like, how is that kind of put into them when it comes around looking at kind of this framework?
It's a great question. One of my go-tos is examining what do you believe, because what we believe impacts what we do. Yeah. It impacts our habits. Yeah. It impacts the way that we plan lessons for students and the way that we deliver lessons for students and the way that we look at data about students. How do we react when we look at data that says that our college credit plus classes don't have an inordinate amount of black males in them? What do? How do we react about that? Or do we tell a narrative that justifies that being the case? So I think a lot of the work that we do in instructional coaching is asking questions that have educators reflecting on themselves, in the vein of how do my beliefs about students or even about humans affect the way that I deliver instruction and evaluate instruction in my classroom.
Nice.
I'll give an equity example. Like a very practical example. I was actually just talking about this with a student, and we were talking about small groups, right? And she wants to run her centers, and the centers were the same thing. Every student had the same piece of paper at center. And so when I was talking to her, I was really trying to get her to understand that you can have a name writing center, and you can call it the name writing center. In that center, you've got students who know how to write their first name and their last name. They don't need to do it 8 times a day. You have students who don't even know the letters in their name. So every student shouldn't get that same sheet of paper. How do you take that center and make it so, or if you got 4 different levels, you might have students writing sentences
Yeah.
with their name and the names of their classmates. You may have students who are specifically working on writing their first and last name. Maybe you've got students that's working on letter formation within that center, and they're making sure those A's are faced the correct way in their name. And maybe you've got students who need a really big, like, differentiated route. They might need you to increase that font. And they may be only able to do it 2 times, and you might have to go through with the highlighter and do it yourself so that they're able to trace it.
Right.
So how do we make sure, if our goal is name writing, students are always from first grade or from kindergarten on, they're going to be miles apart in what they know. And I think that only grows the higher they go in grade levels. So how do you make sure they're getting what they need?
Yeah, what they need now. I mean, yeah, I agree. I think there's sort of a base level of, that's why I believe in credos, because I think our worlds are framed by the words of our mouth, and they're executed, it's built by our choices, right? And so, I think you have to start. I used to have, when I was a teacher, I would go around every day and I had a word for every student. You're brilliant. You are, I had a list, right? And this is high school. Right? It's not elementary. So these are like juniors and seniors. Like, oh, Mr. Walker, would you, but if I missed a day, after we got like about a month in, where's my word? What's my word for the day? Okay. So I think there's a base level of just, I believe in you, that has to be there, right? But then, right, and I think I loved your example. Right, then it's about like, oh, okay, so what's the differentiation that needs to take place? Because people hear equity, they usually think, kids who are quote unquote behind, right? And I say that because those aren't the words that we feel are most accurately describe, what's going on. But it's not just it's for everyone. It's for gifted kids, right? To her point, if a kid is 2 grade levels above, what they need is going to be something different than the kid who's not even on grade level. And so back to those 4 questions, what do we want students to know? How are we going to know if they've learned it? What are we going to do if they're not achieving mastery right now? What are we going to do if they're above it, right? Differentiating our instruction to meet the needs of the students that are in front of us is not only an equity proposition. I would say it's a justice proposition. And that if we're not doing this work, we're not doing the work. And so, I happen to live with the director of equity, right? So, but I think that these are, conversations that are critical for us to have, right? And that we need to see them as not being an appendage,
Yes.
but being sort of an integrated part of just what we're doing, whether we're talking about talent management, whether we're talking about curriculum instruction, whether we're talking about leadership in schools, or our teacher workforce, or our instructional assistants, or whatever it is that we're talking about. How does equity play a role in that?
Yeah.
Right? And so to me, I was encouraged because I think the more that we can start sort of talking about things not as sort of separate things, it helps the experience of people that have to enact it to say, oh, okay, that's what that looks like, right? Because I think for some people it is scary, right? Long COVID is real, not just medically, right? And it is real medically, but it's real from an emotional standpoint for our teachers and for our principals. We experienced a global trauma, and I think we ought not rush past that, right? I think there's a recognition of that. There's a recognition of that with our students. There's a recognition of that with our teachers and our principals and our, our safety and security and our bus drivers and everyone that works, the secretaries. We just have to be mindful of how we continue to move forward together, and just recognizing that, hey, we just went through something, right? We went through some things, right?
Yes.
And we have to give each other grace.
Yeah. So before we wrap up, what's next? Because we have a PD day coming up.
Yeah. So, so learning from student work is where we're starting. Those are those 4 questions, right? That we've, and so you're not behind. You're right on. You're right where you should be. Okay. We just had the principal meeting today, full PD day with principals that Roni and some others led, and then we'll be next week, as you mentioned, we'll be working with our teaching staff. So we're going to start working through it. I think one of the things we're going to do, and teachers will see this, instructional coaches and our principals or principal supervisors, we're going to be seeking feedback. We want to know, hey, what's going on with curriculum and Canvas, right? The survey that we're going to have for our teachers on the 20th is going to be around asking, questions around access, around use, varying degrees of access, varying degrees of use, and opportunities and barriers that are part of that, right? So that's how we're going to start off, and then we'll lean into it. And it's not, it's not a gotcha. It's not, you don't have to attach your name. That's not what it's not about trying to evaluate someone. It's really about seeking understanding, seeking first to understand before being understood. Certainly, I think we have some ideas what we think is going on, to Jomika's point earlier about, this is overwhelming, right? I mean, that's what I heard. I mean, she didn't say that, but, Roni named. I mean, it is. We used to have a running joke when I was a principal. This is too much, I mean, we would just, but, people do it. They get up every day, they come in. So what's next is learning from student work. Then we're going to continue to pull that thread through. We'll do learning design after that. There'll be opportunities for teachers in the afternoons. This is mainly middle school and secondary, but we got plans for elementary. We haven't forgot about y'all. We got you. For them to work together on some learning design work, on some planning work, because I think part of it is that teachers need time to digest.
Yes.
It's like we are running at a pace that is just hard to sustain. And so I think we're trying to be thoughtful about slowing it down at meaningful points. I mean, we got things to do, but where can we slow it down a little bit to give people a chance to really process? And I think people will be receptive to that. I mean, that's my sense of it. Nice. So,
nice.
That's next.
Nice, exciting.
Yeah.
It's like we got the school year off, ground running. And
we do.
Got some more exciting things in the works.
We do.
Yes.
Yeah, awesome. Well, I want to thank you both for joining us for season 2 of Teacher Chat.
That's right.
Excited
Thank
that,
you.
We continued this and that you guys were very willing to come on and talk to us and share your experience. Hopefully this will not be the last time that we get to invite you guys on here, and I'm excited. I'm excited to see where we go.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Well, CCS family, thanks again, as always, for joining us. We're trying something new, trying to spice it up a little bit. Not trying to say we're coming for Dr. Clarineau's throne, but just going to put it out there. Maybe we will. Who knows? I don't know. He has a really good following right now. So we got some work to do.
Well, he's my friend, so imitation is the highest form of flattery.
You know what?
That's right.
That's what I said. When he sits in this chair and does it so cool. So,
that's right.
Yes.
That's right.
So until next time, CCS family, I'm Tyler Carter.
I'm Todd Walker.
See you later.
Adios.